As a police leader who has responded to many mental health calls, I recognize the need for tools that enhance collaboration between behavioral health and law enforcement. Gelada simplifies co-responder and crisis response programs with smarter data and communication solutions. For a demo, visit julata.com or check the show notes. That's JULOTA.com.
We don't expect perfect candidates coming through. That's something, we always have to remember, we're under a microscope all the time in law enforcement.
Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tum. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. I am joined by special guest Donovan Houvener. Thanks for being on the show, Donovan.
Absolutely. Love it.
Check back for a prior episode where we talk about Donovan, his career, his coming into law enforcement. But now we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty of advice, feedback, and just information for those coming into the career, right? So as you all know, if you listen to that prior episode, Donovan was involved in different stages of his career with backgrounds, very recently in the background unit and a polygrapher. And we could even get into academy instructor. But yeah, Donovan, man. And I kind of did a little teaser, you were just talking about like ownership, and that's a self-development, career development, maturity thing at different stages of your career. And then I was like, shoot, like that's the stuff, right? When we talk about police applicants, it's ownership. And then even in that episode, you're talking about reflecting and then being able to reflect back changes that one makes in their life to curb something, right? So the person that didn't make it and came back saying, here's all the things I did. And so I want to tie that back in too, because sometimes when people, they hear the super quick, I suppose, no, is that, hey, you need more time and experience. It's like, well, what do you do with that time? And that's what I always want to challenge applicants with, is like, what are you actively doing all the time to make sure you're literally the best person you can be? And then that way you can be the best applicant and the best cop you can be.
And that's a big thing. It's something that we talk about at the Police Applicant Podcast is, we don't expect perfect candidates coming through. Right now I do backgrounds for a private company. And man, when I get someone who has nothing in their background, I get a little suspicious, but I'm like, wow, this is just a dream. It makes it too easy. But I also look at it then when they have nothing in their background, they don't have any life experience. I like someone who's got a little bit of something in their background, but at the end of their personal history statement, there's always that big blank box that they can fill in, and where they're able to put in there, hey, this is what I did growing up or a couple of years ago. This is what I did to correct it. This is how I learned from it. And this is how I've changed my life. That's going to mean a lot to most background investigators. They're going to take a second look at that. That may not be that automatic, hey, let's just shove them off to the side and send them a rejection letter. Let's bring them in. Let's talk to them. That's going to get your foot in the door, at least to have those conversations now with that background investigator. So it's one of those things. I've had some people do some really bad stuff, not felony stuff, I should say, but, not a homicide or anything, but some stuff that, we don't really think is a good fit for law enforcement. But when they start talking about what they learned from it, what they did to improve their life, we give them that chance. And I brought some of them on.
Yeah. And I think it's worth saying, hey, if you have that squeaky clean background, don't go out and do stuff. He's not saying that, but it's just being honest with the process. And sometimes we all have our biases. We're humans. And so you see that when you look at a packet and you start trying to fill in the blanks or read through and analyze this stuff. So one question that comes up a lot, and this is in my own reflection of running through and reviewing backgrounds, as well as, I coach some people that are trying to get hired and a lot of interview and just kind of work with people on what they need to work on. And for me, it's a holistic thing. But oftentimes the question comes up of, how do you explain something? And I get torn on how I want people to navigate it, because I want them to defer to kind of where they're at. But as a background reviewer, I've seen so many times where I'm reading this thing, it's just paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. And I'm like, You are over explaining this, and it almost sounds like someone's making the excuse. But I guess if I were to remove that bias, I could see I'm inferring a tone where they might just be like, I'm literally trying to tell you everything. How do you navigate things like that? Or what helps you in doing that role?
I've come across some of those now, and I think we're in a great time for applicants right now because there's so many things out there that they can utilize to help with this. If you have something where you just want to explain everything and you write this great big, page long explanation, you're like, man, this is really wordy. The great thing is you can throw that into chat GPT or something and ask it to summarize for you first off. Get it down so that it's something that a background investigator is going to take time and read through. But again, at the end of it, if you can always put in, what you learned and what you've done, that's really what I mean. We don't need the nitty gritty of what you did in that incident. We really need to know how you grew from that incident to make you that better candidate because of it. I've seen that too, where they'll come in, they'll fill up a couple pages on explaining what happened. They didn't give me the what happened after, and that's I think a lot of investigators want that what happened after because I would be the one that then would call them in to have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so helpful, right? It's like, what did you learn? What are you doing? What has changed, right? What is present in your life that this will, I have full confidence as an outside observer that there's a slim to none chance that it'll happen again.
Mhm.
And I think a very easy example is financial, right? So
Yeah.
people, hey, I filed bankruptcy or I had pretty significant debt. Would that preclude me from being able to be a cop? And these days, oftentimes, no. However,
Mhm.
when was that? What have you done? What do your financials look like right now?
Right.
And I've seen one where they just bought like a $70,000 car, and then they still have two credit cards like with some pretty large rotating debt. And I'm like, clearly we have not learned the full
Right.
lesson. So let's get back to the drawing board. And not just finances. I don't want people to freak out when they hear that, but oftentimes, how I'm a believer that how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so I don't know, I can't think off the hand a lot of candidates that had horrible financials and every other piece of their life was super squared away.
Right. And I think one that I always had a hard time with is they got mixed up in drugs, whether it's cannabis, whether it was cocaine, whatever, which are the two that I see the most right now for some reason. I didn't know cocaine was still a thing, but I guess it is. Uh,
Yeah, right.
yeah, and they stopped using, especially cannabis. Gave themselves that year before they started applying for a job, and that to me, I have a hard time with. Um, I get, hey, I tried it once, I tried it twice, but no, I was using it every day or every week or whatever, and then, "Oh, I just decided I wanna be a cop, so I just laid off it for a year so I could meet the qualification." I'm like, I just I struggle with that one, that's one I would say, I think I want a little more time, you
Hmm.
know, you away from it to show that you can be away from it, because there's all sorts of studies going on with this stuff, if it's addictive, if it's not, but it's also a lifestyle, and I wanna make sure that they can live a life that, is gonna meet the standard that we need in law enforcement. So that's one that just always kinda got me when they've been using
Yeah.
it, and then all of a sudden, "Oh, I just stopped because I wanted to be a cop."
Yeah. Yeah. And I haven't thought about this term or this phrase, but it's almost like live the way you want to be able to demonstrate your intent. Right.
Right.
And what I mean by that, it's like, yes, the standards at this department might say you can smoke marijuana until literally you apply.
Mhm.
But does that mean you smoke marijuana until literally the day you apply? Or do you demonstrate what a police officer is expected to do? So as soon as you learn you want to do this thing, you're like, oh shoot, you know what? I should probably stop smoking, even though it's legal in the state at my age. I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to stop hanging out with my buddies when they do that. I'll do other things with them, or if they
Mhm.
can't bear to do that, then maybe I'll distance because I don't want to be in that situation if this is my career.
Right.
And then that's that adage, act as if, right? So I think for a lot of applicants, they're focusing too much on the nitty gritty. Oh, what are they going to worry about? But just demonstrate that you are like an ideal candidate. And what does that look like? Well, it probably means distancing yourself from that substance. It probably means not just trying to do the minimum push-ups and trying to train until you can. It just means like make fitness, part of your
Right.
lifestyle now. Like do you want all cops, or do you think the average civilian wants cops to have fitness be a part of their their lifestyle? And I think most people would say, yes, I want you to be able
Mhm.
to go handle the bad guy, or come save me, with post haste, right? Godspeed.
Yes. Yep.
Um, so just lean in and just make it your life.
Yeah, and that's something. I mean, we always have to remember we're under a microscope all the time in law enforcement. Um, whether it's the media, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's your friend, they'll say, "Hey, I remember, you were smoking just a year ago before you got this cop job. Why is it so bad?" Or just that kind of stuff. And we've got to be able to show that we can live the life that we expect others to live. We have to be a little bit above what is expected so that it doesn't blow up in our face,
Yeah.
because everyone's looking for a way to trip up a cop now.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest issues that stick out to you in background land?
Lying is number one. Lying.
Hmm.
And it may not be just the outright lie. It's just trying not to tell us everything or trying to paint it in a way that maybe it looks better. And I've always
Yeah.
said in criminal investigations, when you interview the victim and the suspect, you're going to get each one of their versions is going to sway towards them. So I get that the applicant is going to sway whatever happened in their favor. But just understand, we're going to find out the truth. I would say that's the biggest one is lying, and it'll come out one way or the other. We'll find it, uh, whether it's big or small. To me, a lie is a lie, and I know you've heard me and Ken say it. If you lie, you die,
Yeah.
and that background is going to follow you for the rest of your time.
Yep. You are now blackballed from the whole police hiring
Hmm.
process everywhere.
Yes.
Whereas, hey, you own it. You own your dumb mistakes here. They're like, no, thank you. You own your dumbest mistakes there. They're like, oh, we really like you, but not yet. And
Hmm.
so you might be able to wait a year, do a lot of self reflection, self work, come back in. And that second place might be like, yeah, you're in. Or the third place is like, yeah, we're good with it. Come on
Hmm.
in. Right. And
Yep.
meanwhile, you lie, you omit. And so that's the not telling the full thing or not telling about it. Maybe they won't find out. I'm too embarrassed. Or I think that's going to be the deal breaker.
Hmm.
No, you lying is the deal breaker. That's the ultimate deal breaker.
Right, right, and not trying to. People try to explain why they omit stuff too. I had someone, he just left an arrest off of his background packet, and then when I
Who?
called him out on it, I'm like, "How did this? Oh, I forgot about it." I'm like, "Hold on,
Too
wait,
many to
wait,
keep track of, maybe?
you you were in handcuffs, you went to jail, and you just forgot to put it down." That doesn't just happen. We as background investigators, we still have to read between the lines and figure out what's going on, and we know that that's just not truthful. So you got to be 100% truthful with this.
Yeah. Anything else stick out to you?
Social media is a killer too. Stupid stuff that people put on social media. They may not think it's a big deal. I remember one time, and I'm not trying to. They'll never know who they are, but they posted a picture of themselves in a very skimpy outfit, with a sponge, and said horse washes for $1 or something. And I'm like, I met
Mm,
with that person and I said, "So if you go up on the stand to testify in a sexual assault case, is this
mm,
the picture you want the defense attorney bringing up?"
yeah.
And I think people forget that stuff lives out there, and that it's going to pop up at the worst time when you don't want it to. Sitting
Yeah.
on the stand, all of a sudden, defense attorney's like, "Hey, look what we found on your social media."
Mhm.
So those are the two. That social media is the other big thing for me that gets you in trouble too.
Yeah, I think if we go back to that act as if, right? Like act as
Hmm.
if you are a police officer now. And could you do it now? And could you
Hmm.
do it publicly? Could you say that publicly? And the wise, emotionally balanced police officers will try to imagine, you're on a call, someone's getting under your skin, or you're at the station, whatever. What if someone was recording right now? Because we should
Right.
assume, and we know we are actually recording most of the time.
Right.
And then I like to flip it into, yeah, okay, I'm okay with that. But what if everything I said was then watched and reviewed by my mom,
Hmm.
by my wife's family, by my daughter? And then I'm like, ooh, yeah, I don't feel as good about that.
Hmm.
So let's act as if, right? If it's in the
Yep.
public sphere.
Yeah. 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 There's just, I always say, if I would have just kept better notes, I could write a whole book on this, because of the stuff that you
Yeah.
run across. But
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, if I had to nail it down to the two big ones, yeah, it's those two. There's other little things that'll pop up here and there. Finances every once in a while will be one of those things, but number one is just that whole lying thing.
Yeah, yep, that's the thing. Pivoting over to Polygraph. So
Yeah.
it is and I remember it myself, right? And I had different polygraphers, and just like people have different backgrounders that are like your buddy, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have the one that's like really scientific, and then, for me, it was, and I passed them all, but
Mm-hmm.
I had the really scientific one that explained everything in the science and really a long time. Like I was way over my head, of course, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
no polygrapher or scientist, but he wanted to make sure I believed him. I was like, I believe you. He's like, okay, so you trust it? And I'm like, no. He's like, what? Why don't you trust it? And I'm like, sir, I'm just being honest. Like, I can't fully trust something I don't understand. You're saying a lot. I believe you. I
Mm-hmm.
believe the process, and I have nothing to hide. But he like really got stuck on that. And then I had the guy that was like the interrogator,
Mm-hmm.
and I just felt like a piece of garbage. And I know, everyone's got their style, but yeah, I throw all that at you I suppose I'm remembering going down memory lane what it feels like to go through that, and I get the angst, right? And especially if you've never done it before. What thoughts do you feel comfortable sharing with applicants when they're like, oh man, this is like you're in the hot seat, like literally you're strapped down and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
Strapped
So
in, I suppose, not strapped down.
yeah, right. Yeah, you have all the components placed on your body, is what we say. So,
Yeah.
and the thing is, everyone has to remember that there's been different styles of training through the years. There's different schools out there that have different philosophies. I'm a big believer this is not an interrogation. I'm not there to interrogate you. Um, I'm there to just make sure that you have fully disclosed everything in your background to your background investigator. We do a similar packet a lot of times. Most background investigators have their own packet that they'll go through. It mimics a background or personal history statement, and we want to make sure that everything's the same. If all of a sudden you forgot to disclose something and it pops in your head when you're in the polygraph, by all means, please let the polygraph examiner know, oh, I just remembered this. I didn't tell my background investigator. I will call him as soon as I walk out the door to let him know, but I honestly forgot. But it's important to make sure that you get everything out there and that you're disclosing 100%, that it's not I'm going to tell him most of it. I'm not going to tell him all of it. Um,
Yeah.
those are the big things. Again, we're just making sure that everything is disclosed. People get hung up on, well, yeah, you're asking about drugs and I admitted to drugs, so I'm concerned. I'm only worried about the drug offenses that you haven't told me about. And I've had good luck talking to people and really stressing, I'm looking for what you have not disclosed, and I think that gets lost a lot of times. So just making sure that they understand it, we're looking for what you have not disclosed to us or your background investigator. As soon as you tell us and I put it on my paper, it's good. And I'll have someone just say, especially lateral police officers, when you talk about possession of stolen property. Well, I take
Mhm.
stolen property off of someone all the time. Great. Let's write it down so that you can clear your mind of it. Yep. It happened in the line of duty. You were in possession of stolen property. Great. I was part of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I had troubles with the polygraph when it came to the sex questions because they never asked me about that. My job portion about downloading child pornography. So they're like, why are you having a problem with this question? I'm like, well, in my job, I did this. And they're like, oh, okay. All right, let's reframe the question. Let's come back. Let's do it again and do that. So that's the big thing. Just making sure you do a good self-evaluation on what you've done in your life, so that you understand that you're just disclosing everything that you possibly can so that you're not hung up on it. The other thing is just get a good night's sleep.
It's like physiological readings, right? And so
Mhm.
there's so much. I mean, okay, so the layman's term, and please like curb this answer or flesh it out, but your body does so many things that you cannot control,
Right.
and that's what you're detecting, right? So the chest strap, and
Mhm.
the what's that part on the finger?
So what we're looking for to really get it down to the bare basic is we're really looking at the autonomic nervous system. And you got the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Parasympathetic is just what keeps us moving every day. It keeps our heart pumping. We have no control over it. The sympathetic system is the fight or flight system. And that's where your body reacts to a lie. Because we all know that if we tell a lie, we've just had it ingrained into us. If we tell a lie, there could be some negative outcome if we're caught in that lie. So
Hmm.
our sympathetic system will kick in very quickly, and then our parasympathetic system goes ahead and then kind of calms it back down. So layman terms, I mean, that's really the thing. It is, we just look for that quick activation of the sympathetic system, which you can't control, but then it comes back down right away. So that's why people are always, they come in and they're like, well, I'm nervous and I'm afraid that's going to have some impact on it. And nervousness is something that we can see. It's just a steady thing that just doesn't come and go. It's just there. So it's your sympathetic system's not bringing it down very quickly. We're looking for big spikes um, when things are going on during the polygraph.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up nervousness because that is a common question.
Hmm.
And I say the same thing. And I said the same thing as a hiring sergeant, which is that, hey, everyone's nervous.
Hmm.
I've been nervous every single time I took it. I was super nervous, but that's not what we're measuring. Is it, have you seen people that are so nervy, or you, even as a professional, when you read it, you're like, yeah, you're freaking out and I
Hmm.
can't get a good read. I can't get a valid sample, or you're failing. And you don't necessarily think they're lying based on the reading, but you're like, you need to calm the,
Yeah, I had one person who he just could not. He was in his head. He's overthought everything. Just I could not get a good reading on him. I didn't say he failed. I just came back and said I can't give an opinion. And then I just recommended that they send him to another polygraph examiner. So that if he came in again, it could be me triggering him, and I don't want that. So
yeah.
and I don't know what the agency did, if they sent him off to another person or not. Sometimes that helps, but yeah, every once in a while you have that one person where they're just in their head, they can't calm down, they're just nervous through the whole thing, and it just throws everything off. They just overthink everything, and
Yeah.
it's difficult.
Yeah, I didn't think about it really at the time, but I had a similar one, coming through our process where, the polygrapher said, hey, I'm not saying he's lying, but
Mhm.
he's freaking out.
Mhm.
And we actually had the conversation where, like, there might be a job performance or job ability issue if, hey, we get nerves, but if you are so, like, you can't get a proper sample, you can't actually conduct the test,
Mhm.
is this person going to be able to calm themselves, right? Like, is this person able to emotionally regulate themselves to do a stressful job? And I think that there's a valid argument there, right? So it's not just,
Right.
hey, I'm not trying to belittle you, guy, but if this is causing you to kind of shut down,
Mhm.
then maybe the job's not for you. And you
Right.
can work on that, right? You process this, put all your thoughts and your fears to bed, and then come back through. But yeah, I think that there is a tangible kind of follow up there for people that are like, well, then the test is, if I'm not lying and the test doesn't work, it's like, well, no, there's this other element too.
Right, right, right. I mean, and when we look at polygraph, we got to understand too. And I never hide the fact, and you can go out on the internet, you can research this. I always discourage candidates from going out on the internet and doing too much research, but a
Yeah,
polygraph is not a 100% science. Um, when it comes to any truth verification, you're never going to have 100% accuracy because we're dealing with so much. We're dealing with psychology. We're dealing with physiology. We're dealing with everything with the human body. There's just so much going on that you're never going to be 100% accurate. However, when it comes to polygraph, we're, depending upon the test that you're using, we're high 80s to low 90% accurate. Which is, I think, pretty good. There's the other system out there, the I detect, where you have to look at the
hmm,
computer when you're answering questions. What they're saying is to get your most conclusive result is if you do the I detect and a polygraph. If they pass both, then you're
sure.
almost to that 100% that they're being 100.
Yeah, the Venn diagram's grossly like overlapping. There's just that
Yep.
tiny sliver left. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I know maybe there's one or two agencies who do that. It does become costly, but for the most part, I mean, if a background investigator does their job right and they send them off to polygraph, they pretty much know what the result's going to be.
Yeah.
So that's the good thing. Again, I know candidates, they have so much stress. I try to take the stress out of them. I try to get them as comfortable as possible. I'm not trying to play any tricks on them or anything when I bring them in for a polygraph. It's just I understand the nervousness. Even when we go through training, I had to do I had 40 some polygraphs done on me by other students. And man, once you start putting those components on you, you get nervous right away anyway. So
Hmm.
I understand what they're going through. So I try to make it as easy as possible for them. But I mean, I still have to do the job. I'm there to help them, or I'm there to make sure that they pass. And that's just by being 100% honest.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you brought up some other questions that I wanted to poke at. One was that the connection to something you experienced, right? In your example, it was working internet crimes
Mhm.
and that sensitive nature there, right, where
Yep.
you have a response. Another thing that I've heard and can affect the readings are like if you're the victim of such a crime. And
Mhm.
so I have heard of more agencies trying to get that information either in the background or in the polygraph so that it can be contextualized. You may be
Right.
even in writing the questions, right?
Right. Right. And it's one of those things too. Yeah. That's when it comes down to it. If you've been involved, a victim of something like that, it's best just to disclose that. Like for me, if someone says, "Hey, you're asking these sex questions," I was a victim of sexual assault. I will ask very, very general questions, nothing to bring back any trauma or anything, just so that I understand what it is, so that they can disclose it and know that, all right, I've told them about it. I can get it out of my mind so I can pass this polygraph. Um, but I don't want to trigger them either. So I want to make sure that it's respectful for them as well. I don't want to be that person that I don't care what's going on. I need you to tell me all this stuff. That's not my style. I want to make sure that we can just get through the polygraph and get a good result, making sure that they've disclosed everything.
Yeah, yeah, and that's good. And just to cut back a little bit, when you're talking about when someone remembers, and from my context, that makes sense. I mean, we do some embarrassing things in our lives, and oftentimes we don't try to think about it a lot.
Hmm.
Um, have you seen that enough that for those listening, again, because we want to be honest, in my recommendation is always, hey, when you do remember it, reach out to your background
Yes.
officer or your point of contact right away, or you're sitting there in the polygrapher chair, bring it up, right? Because if you hide it, now you actually are actively omitting it.
Yes. Yep. And I had when I was a background investigator for Federal Way, I had that where someone, man, they remembered something when they were in the polygraph. They didn't want to say it, and they ended up failing the polygraph, and then came to
Mm,
me and said, "Well, I failed because of this." I'm like, "Well, at this point, you lied. You lied to me the first time. You lied to the polygraph examiner. So there's nothing I can do. So as
yeah,
soon as you know it, just just put it out there so that we understand that. Yeah, you can forget some things. It's fine. We get that. Just let us know as soon as you can."
yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you'd want to summarize for background and polygraph for the candidates out there, those applicants?
One thing I want to talk about with backgrounds is when you are filling out your personal history statement, take that serious. Don't just think, oh, well, the background investigator can find that information. I don't need to put that on there. As a background investigator, we're looking at how thorough you are in completing those documents because when it comes to law enforcement, we have a lot of forms we got to fill. There's a lot of boxes we have to check. And if we miss one box and it goes in front of a judge and we forgot to check a box, someone who's in for murder could be released because we forgot to check a box. So those personal history statements are important that you follow the directions to a T and that you get them done. When it comes to polygraphs, just go in there with the open mind that hey, I get I'm going to be nervous. Stay off the internet. Don't read all these stupid things that are out there on the internet telling you how to beat it. When we talk about backgrounds, if you lie, you die. In polygraph world, if you're caught trying to do some sort of maneuver to
Hmm.
trick the system, you're going to be done for. I don't know any polygraph examiner that's going to want to bring someone on who tried to beat the system rather than just going along and answering the questions.
Yeah, and it reads and it shows that in the readings.
It,
A
it's
lot of these types of techniques, right?
It shows it in the readings, but also as you're answering the questions, the polygraph examiner is looking directly at you, so they're looking for some clues as well. So we know
Hmm.
what to do. So it's one of those things. Just stay off the internet. Just
Yeah, trust.
understand that we're just trying to
Yeah,
do what's best for the department.
yeah, and really, what's best for your spirit for you is just like put it all out there and
Hmm.
just own it and move on. And that's going to help you get over the nerves too. I've
Hmm.
had that conversation with many a person. Hey, do you feel like you put it all out there? Yes.
Right,
Okay, now trust yourself. Because
right.
if you can't trust yourself and get through this process, how can we trust you to do this job? And it goes back to that, how you do one thing is how you do everything. and you're being evaluated. That's something I've said for many times in hiring, and I continue to say, like, from the time you reach out to anybody, an email, phone call, tour, ride along, now you're being evaluated. And
Mhm.
so that shouldn't scare you. That should present as an opportunity. And when you have a packet to fill out, take it seriously, right? If you have
Right.
a deadline and you cannot make it because family emergency, all these things, then don't mail it in. Reach out,
Right.
because most agencies that have a healthy culture, like, they will work with you, right?
Mhm.
They will be just like, if you, let's plug it into act as if you're a cop, right?
Mhm.
Just because something happens at home, are you just gonna like turn in your report half done, or are you gonna say, "Hey, Sarge, I got this thing. Okay, cool. Like, why don't you finish it at home, and then we'll figure out what we need to do to get this thing filed so the bad guy doesn't get released." Right? Like,
Right.
it's life, and so just do your best and communicate.
Yep. Yeah. And the last thing that I want to say about polygraphs, so that anyone listening who hasn't done one, they understand. This isn't like the TV shows. This isn't like the movies. When you're going to do the polygraph examiner will review every question with you before they ever start doing the test.
Yeah,
Give
yeah,
you an opportunity to practice your answer so that everyone knows exactly what's going to be asked, how it's going to be answered. It's not a surprise question in the middle of this test. There's no surprises when it comes to a polygraph. We walk you through everything through the whole polygraph. So
yeah. No, that's fantastic. Thank you for the rundown,
yeah,
bringing that expertise in. And because you were an academy instructor, I just want to see if you have any nuggets that you want to tell the people. Maybe they're focused on applying, right? But like, no, let's think beyond that. And what are the things that you see in strong applicants that translate into strong recruits and then officers?
well, the first thing is, and I know this is something you're big on, is the physical fitness. I don't care what the physical ability testing is to get into the academy. That shows nothing at all what you need to have physical fitness wise to be a police officer. You need to be in shape. You don't need to be a shape, um, because your life could depend upon your physical fitness. Your partner's life could depend upon physical fitness. So that's first and foremost. You got to be ready for that. Second is when it's coming to academy time. I know people say, "Well, it's not that bad. It's almost like a college course." Just make sure you have your personal life in order. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
make sure your family, if you've got a family, they understand there's going to be some things that are going to come up where you're going to have to study and you can't participate in family time. So make time for the academy. You've got to do that. Um, and then third is when you get into the academy, you've got to do everything above and beyond what's expected of you. Um, just the way academies are set up, there is some natural downtime during the academy when people are running scenarios, when there's some hands-on training going. You have to start thinking to yourself, what can I do to better myself during those times? We give everyone, tasks that they can do. The big thing that we at our academy we tell people is recruits when it comes to final testing and mock scenes, number one failure is they miss something during a frisk or a pat down. Um, and we give them everything they need so that when it comes to downtime, they can be practicing that with other people in class to make sure that they are getting it so that they don't fail it. So just being respectful of your time and trying to figure out how best to use your time to make yourself into a better officer.
Yeah, I love that, and I think if any applicants or prospects out there, whether you're 17 or you're 20, well, whether you're 28 or 32, whatever,
Right.
you hear all that, you can see where there's a direct correlation to like how you could do the job. So not
Mhm.
just the minimum, right? Let's think about what level of fitness do you want to be the ideal officer that you can be, and
Right.
work towards that. Right? It's not overnight.
Mhm.
Just start adopting those things, a little nuggets. That's something that I talk about all the time. And let's recognize the flexible nature of this job, or the need to be flexible, right?
Mhm. Right.
Weekends, holidays, nights, holding over late, that's going to happen. So if you can't get you and your family and your lifestyle to a point that can accept that, then it's probably not a good fit, right? So if academy, you had to stay late for mock scenes or whatever, the schedule changed.
Mhm.
You got to be able to adapt to that. Like, the job is not just a 9 to 5. And then that last piece is that taking ownership, right? Making the most of your time and resource. I love that because we can just idly just kind of coast, and no one wants that kind of cop. Every agency has them. We need engagement, right? You need to continue to better yourself, and that's how you're going to be able to be there for your department and your family in the best way.
Right. And and that last piece, the way I look at it, when I watch recruits at the academy, I can tell who's going to be that officer who's going to be out looking for something to do all the time. And I can tell who's going to be the officer who's going to find a dark alley to go park in and just listen to his radio and wait for the call to come out. So get yourself into that position where you want to be that go-getter. You want to be out there doing something to better your community. So just figure out what you're going to use your time best with in those downtimes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Donovan. Yeah. Thank you for all the time and the wisdom to share with my audience today. If people didn't get it from the last episode, where can they find you and reach out or listen to you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Truth Tracker, and Tracker is Traker. I'm on there, and it has links to the podcast and to some of the stuff I do for Special Olympics.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, man. Appreciate it so much.
All right, thank you.
Lastly, I mentioned when you go to bluegritwellness.com/shop or click on shop, you'll see the stickers, you'll see the shirts, and the shirts are in partnership, or not really partnership, but I've decided to slice off a chunk of the proceeds to QRF Up Foundation, right? So it's an organization, find them on social media, QRF Up. They are supporting the suicide prevention of first responders and veterans. They're a really impressive group of people, and an app that is based on that. So check that out. Check out their website. Check out their social. They're growing super fast in such a good way because it's about saving lives. But anyway, every purchase of the Memento Mori shirt, thank you for all your shares, all your comments, feedback, questions, sending it to a buddy, putting it on your social, all your reviews, even going to Spotify and Apple and giving, a 5-star review, 5-star rating, like that stuff all helps. I'm learning about podcast SEO and optimization, and it goes so much to that type of stuff. So although I do feel kind of annoying by asking, I do really appreciate it. So a lot of you that do reach out saying how much you appreciate the project, how good it is for the first responder community and the police community, thank you. It does mean a lot. It keeps me super motivated to put back into this. At the same time, if you are able to take a moment and do that, extremely, extremely helpful. With that, I wish you a good rest of your January. Thank you so much. It means so much. I'm super humbled by sharing this time and space with you, and you sharing it back with me in this project. Thank you. Stay safe and stay gritty.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.